Welcome back to the Digital Toilet Paper Podcast on this Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, paying great respects to an awesome federal holiday where kids don't have to go to school and a lot of people don't have to go to work. So hopefully you guys are tuning in. Thank you for joining us again. I'm your host, Jason Bear, and joining me today again are...
Rex Rebo.
At Armed and Hilarious.
And we're happy to be back with you guys. Today... we want to talk about sports. Sports. We haven't done a sports podcast in a while, so we thought we'd jump right in. Lots of cool things have been happening in the sports world over the last, I guess, few weeks, but even over the last couple of days. Drew Brees maybe played his last NFL football game. How's that? Kissing the fans goodbye in New Orleans.
And was it the fans or was it his wife? Like, I'm coming home, mama.
Okay. I don't know if Drew Brees actually says mama, but yeah, okay. Sure. What else? Tom Brady signing autographs for or no, it was a shout out to what's his face who he just like pummeled in the game.
Oh, who? I missed that. No, okay. What happened?
Yeah, we'll come back to it in a minute. I got to stay on top.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Because Tom Brady's relevant to the next part of this podcast.
All right.
Which the coolest thing that I saw, which I don't know how many of you guys out there are big like MMA fans, but I don't know if you guys saw Max Holloway's fight, or at least the highlights of it. So if you guys haven't already, go Google Max Holloway, the greatest boxer in the UFC.
In MMA.
Or in MMA, whatever he said. I mean, it was like sick. It was something out of professional wrestling where he's in the middle of the end of a match that he's clearly won. And he looks over to the broadcast table and while he's got his hands down, he's slipping punches and he shouts out, "I'm the best boxer in UFC," right? Like, it was beautiful. It was absolutely
and proved it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like watching Mike Tyson fight an infant, right? And he did the best move I've ever seen. It wasn't slipping the punch; it's the no look punch goes behind the head, right?
Yeah.
Like insane, just cartoon style.
I mean, we couldn't.
Thank you.
We couldn't have scripted it better than that.
Yeah. Thank you for putting the image of Mike Tyson fighting a baby.
Yeah. So that got me thinking, like, okay, it's easy for you to say that you're the best of whatever it is you do, right? I'm the greatest. I'm the best of this and that. But then to turn around and prove it and back it up and have it and hold the scrutiny, that's even bigger. So, I mean, Conor McGregor chimed in on the conversation. He just wrote "lol" on Twitter or something like that, like whatever. Because of course, I think McGregor's second fight in MMA or in UFC was against Max Holloway back in like 2013, and McGregor beat him.
Well, he also, to his credit, he did not say, "I am the greatest fighter in MMA history."
That's true. He said, "I'm the greatest boxer in the UFC," and that's current.
He could be true, and I think McGregor has better ground game, all that stuff. But I do like that he was like, "I am the best boxer."
Yeah, he's very specific.
Yeah, oddly specific, especially in the middle of a fight. Well, punches are getting hurled at you.
Well,
right?
Also, he had a no-look punch that he landed. Like he landed like a no-look cross or right hook too. Like he landed a no-look punch and then slipped punches and then it was. If you guys are into fighting, or even if you're not into fighting, go Google Max Holloway, greatest boxer in MMA, and watch that clip, because at the very least, you'll be very entertained. So that got me thinking, though, like, it's easy to say that you're the greatest of something. It's another thing for the stats to back you up, but it's an even more important, in some ways, thing if the fans or the caretakers or the arbiters of your sport or genre or whatever also agree that without contest you're the greatest one. And that, I mean, we're going to be talking about sports today, but it could be like music. Like Michael Jackson is the king of pop. That's his title. Nobody else is the king of pop, right? Not not Bruno
Frankie
Mars,
Valli?
not Bruno Mars, not. I mean, Elvis Presley is the king of rock and roll. Nobody else is the king of rock and roll, right? It's kind of an uncontested. Now there are better musicians than Elvis Presley. In fact, Michael Jackson. I don't know if he's technically a musician. He's a singer songwriter. He doesn't.
Prince
play
is a
any
better
instruments.
musician than Michael Jackson is, but he's not the king of
Well,
pop.
he's just the prince.
Yeah, he
the
is.
Prince of Funk.
Yes.
Prince of
But
Funk.
yes, spurts.
Yeah. So let's deep dive into this just a little bit. Okay, so the greatest. What are we going to agree on? The greatest basketball player. Michael Jordan, unanimous in this small circle.
So well, should we do MMA first? We did MMA.
Okay, well, let's jump back to MMA. We'll put the Jordan conversation on hold for a second.
So I think it's interesting. So MMA is interesting, and this will carry over for all of it. There's a lot of people that think Fedor is the greatest MMA fighter of all time.
Okay.
A lot of it is because he was undefeated for so long, and then he gets beat. And so while we're talking about fighting is so 1v1. And so it's like, well, Muhammad Ali is the greatest boxer of all time because, beat Joe Frazier and all these guys. And I think a lot of it to do with who the greatest is of all time in your sport is who your peers are at that time, who you're going against. I think there's a conversation you have about John Bones Jones being the greatest.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about that. So in the conversation of the greatest boxer of all time, are we talking the greatest heavyweight boxer of all time because it's more interesting, or the greatest boxer of all time pound for pound? Either way, the conversation usually steers toward John Bones Jones for modern, but generally it's a toss-up between Muhammad Ali and Iron Mike Tyson, right? Although if you ask Floyd Mayweather, then it's Floyd Mayweather. But nobody, I don't care who you are, nobody really puts Floyd Mayweather into that category.
Not seriously.
Not in a serious way, but by the numbers.
Even Manny, but that's where you go into it. Even he beat Manny Pacquiao, but that fight happened 8 years later than it should have.
Yeah,
6 years later than it should have.
And
they're two completely different fighters. And so you have to take that into context whenever you're comparing these guys. And that's why, being undefeated is absolutely a mark for you. But I think more it's who you beat along the way, and also when you beat these guys as well.
Right, yeah. I was going to say that too. Muhammad Ali beat the best of the best when they were all at their best.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Sonny Liston, Frazier, Foreman, those guys. Mike Tyson beat the best of the best when they were all at their best, and he was a child.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think that's so another huge thing that I put when you're talking about who is the greatest of all time is what your peers say about you. And Mike Tyson has gone on record and said Muhammad Ali would have beat me. And I think that holds a huge weight. Now, I think there was a time where Mike Tyson was unbeatable. If you catch him in his prime right after Customato passes away, I think he's unbeatable. I think Ali wins 2 out of 3 of those fights, though.
Oh yeah, well,
I think
we've had this conversation before off the record, Rex and I, about it comes down to Muhammad Ali being able to take a punch, right? Mike Tyson, not very many people, no matter who you are, can take a punch from Mike Tyson at power, right? It's just not going to happen. But Muhammad Ali can take a punch from Joe Frazier. Rope-a-dope only works because Muhammad Ali is a durable fighter, right?
Absolutely.
That's the only part of Mike Tyson's game that doesn't pan out, right? 4 rounds, maybe 5, and Mike Tyson generally is out of gas.
He's until Evander Holyfield, no one took Mike Tyson to
precisely. He doesn't have experience. He doesn't have experience needing to go that distance. But that's Muhammad Ali's whole realm. Everything that he does is take the beating until the later rounds and then deliver it. Like Rocky and Drago, right?
Yep. And Tyson said he's just smarter. He's a smarter guy than I am.
Oh, well,
and then there's one technicality I will give to Mayweather that I haven't seen in any other, professional boxer. Mayweather Jr. is the greatest boxer in, you know, in boxing, where
Not
the
enough.
other guys were proper fighters.
In modern
Because-
history,
well, in
because
mo-
you've got to look at Jack Dempsey, you look at Willie Pep, you look at Sugar Ray Robinson is probably the
Right.
greatest boxer of, you know what I mean? If we talk
No,
about
but like
and
the
and
reason
Roy
why he
Jones
went,
and De La Hoya and those guys too, as technical boxers.
well, no, like, all right, Mayweather went 48-0, 49-0
Do you
because
count
he
Conor
was.
McGregor?
I do.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't an exhibition, was it?
No, fair.
So-
But Conor McGregor's not a boxer.
And
like-
to Conor's credit, he landed more blows on Mayweather than any other opponent Mayweather ever faced.
Right, but it's also to Mayweather's defense, and I'm not a Floyd Mayweather apologist, so don't let that get out. Mayweather was also mostly retired, and then came out of retirement to come fight Conor McGregor, and it's a fight he didn't take seriously, honestly.
Oh, that's a cartoon fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was,
so
yeah.
I mean,
All
it's
right,
hard to
but-
map that.
Technically speaking, because talent only takes you so far, and then knowledge and skill, Mayweather possessed knowledge of boxing. Like, he wasn't a knockout artist. He wasn't the flashiest or anything like that. He would punch you to gain points, not
Right.
to.
He's a
not
sport.
to-
He's a
not to
sport
punish.
boxer, not a fighter. He's a
Correct.
sport
But-
boxer, not a fighter. But that's
But that was Sugar Ray Robinson was doing that. Like, he was the one that innovated that. And so that brings me to another point, is that I think being heralded as the greatest of all time, you have to innovate your sport as well.
Okay.
I think that has something to do with it as well. Where you're absolutely right, Armed and Hilarious, that Mayweather took what was well, and even in the business side as well, right?
Yeah.
Like he scheduled his fights correctly. He knew when to fight him. He even knew where to fight him. Even fighting Conor McGregor, he chose which gloves to use and
Yeah.
everything like that. Like, he understood the business of boxing, and you better believe that has to do with becoming the greatest, right?
Oh,
like,
of course,
he
yeah.
was all the way. Now, when it comes to box, I wouldn't put Floyd barely breaks the top 20 greatest boxers of all time as far as I'm concerned, but he understood the business probably better than anybody ever.
So actually, jumping back to that boxer versus fighter, let's join back. You said Fedor, right? Greatest pound for pound fighter in the history of the MMA.
There was a time where you could have looked at Fedor as the greatest pound for pound fighter for sure.
Fedor, John Bones Jones is in that conversation. I would argue still George St. Pierre.
There's a lot of people that think that too. I mean, I think Khabib has it.
Khabib is the greatest MMA fighter right now, for sure.
No, I think he's greatest of all time.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think Khabib is greatest of all time. George St. Pierre was so good on the mat, had hands, was a phenomenal athlete, and he was an early adapter of eating healthy, living this way,
Yeah.
yoga, all this stuff. I think Khabib took all of that. He would be maybe not quite an Olympic level wrestler if
Yeah,
he would have
I'd
focused
argue
on
that.
it, but he would have been near there. His hands are great, and we're just talking about Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor was a pound for pound number one, dismantled him. It was completely dismantled.
Similar to
of
the
him.
Mayweather fight, McGregor wasn't. He's no longer at the top of his game. He's no longer at his
Ooh,
best.
if he wasn't at the top of his game, he's within 2 years of being at peak Conor McGregor.
Because-
and same with Khabib. I mean, Khabib is retired now.
Yeah.
I know he retired a little bit early, but they're really close. And then on top of it, Khabib fought some phenomenal fighters, and he got took into deep water. He's been knocked down. He's done all that stuff.
Yeah. Khabib
but
has
his
is
hands.
resilient.
I think George St. Pierre. I think John Bones Jones, if he could have stayed off the booger sugar, would probably in that conversation. He's beat some phenomenal fighters, but I think Khabib has it.
And who else is in the conversation? Right, Anderson Silva, Demetrius Johnson can be in the
and that's
conversation.
where you go
I think-
innovation. Anderson Silva is one that was just a freak, right?
But
and
we're
we're in such an infancy of MMA, right?
Yeah.
This sport is so new, and I think Khabib is the first of the total package.
Oh, yeah,
of having
yeah.
it completely.
So now we can draw the line. Does that put like Royce or Royler Gracie as like the greatest martial artist then? Because you're going to separate traditional martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu being the superior of the traditional martial arts, and then the Gracie family. as a family being the greatest traditional martial artist. And we don't have the MMA without their contribution, of course, but
now
everybody uses that as a platform to.
Yeah, it's not Hoist. It's the is it Rickon?
Rickon Gracie?
Rickon Gracie is
them.
Probably, again, you talk about innovation. He changed everything. And those guys, and the Gracies fought anybody. That's where, it's important that the Khabib is undefeated. I think that's a notch in the belt. The fact that the Gracies fought anybody, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
Suffered losses and then
Rickson
adapted.
Gracie is that brother.
Oh, yeah. He was.
So, Rickson, Royler, Roger, Hoist, Kron, Helio. Like, Helio's the patriarch. But
yeah. Those guys, that's where you can get Rickson. You might have an argument with, for me, as far as I'm concerned, that he's the greatest fighter of all time. But in the modern, it's Khabib, total package.
I mean, there is one other, perhaps not in the same weight class, but currently, I will give a tip of the hat to the last style bender. He has the arrogance of Muhammad Ali, and like, you can have arrogance like Muhammad Ali, but you also have to be liked, because there's other arrogant fighters, whatever, along, in the annals of history and fighting, where you hate their guts. But man, what's the last style bender's real name?
Sorry, I stopped listening. Israel Adesanya, that guy. The
Israel Adesanya,
Australian guy, New Zealand guy.
No, New Zealand guy by way of some part of Africa.
Yeah. All right,
but
So
he's currently undefeated. He's taken on dudes, that are technically above his weight class, and every time he comes, like, it's fun to watch him.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact that he's a good fighter.
Okay, so let's take this out of the realm of an individual sport. First of all, there's only one athlete in all of sports that his official nickname title, we talked about this in the tournament edition thing, is the Great One, and that's Wayne Gretzky. But can we talk about how, does anybody, no offense to my hockey fans out there, I love me some hockey, but nobody seems to be coming for Gretzky's title the way that they come for the titles of other people in other sports, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why it's so fun. And again, amongst peers, he's the greatest, right?
Yeah.
Everyone, you ask anybody, and
he's the great one. Yeah.
Now, if you talk to somebody, and so this will kind of be a segue into what I think is important, why it's fun to have these conversations, is that you could argue that Dominik Hasek is the greatest hockey player of all time, but they're so different, right? Being a goalie and then hockey is interesting, and we'll have to talk soccer too, because I'd be interested in seeing who you guys think is the greatest soccer player of all time.
Yeah.
But hockey is so transitional, going one end to the other end. Yes, you can be, and Gretzky was a center, but going end to end and playing defense, you're kind of moving back and forth, and defenders can score. People up front, forwards can come back and play defense. So that's why even when you talk Jordan being the greatest basketball player of all time, you can say you're missing a couple centers in there that you could argue are better point scorers and have a bigger impact on their game than Jordan ever did.
Well,
right?
when you're talking about like points per hands on the ball, right? Mm-hmm. For that kind of thing. Yeah. Well, I was thinking, we have to talk about nostalgia bias versus recency bias versus legacy bias, right? All three of those things come into account. When it comes to hockey, an argument can be made for Bob Orr, who was the great one before Gretzky.
Absolutely.
And Mario Lemieux, I guess, is the great one right after.
So good. Yeah.
All right. So my naivety might be showing here, but in the context of greatness in any sport, you compare the person's greatness to the challenges they faced. I mean, season by season, you can categorize the opponents Michael Jordan has to face to get to the chip. I mean, you measure Michael's greatness by his talent to beat Karl Malone, John Stockton, even like in the earlier Isaiah Thomas. So you don't get that same argument for Gretzky. Like, yes, Gretzky is the greatest.
I would say only because hockey isn't as mainstream as baseball, football, and basketball.
Hello and welcome to Toilet Time, something to occupy yourself while you pop a squat. This is Jack.
And this is Nova, and we have our kitty Misty with us. Misty, say hi.
You can find us on any streaming service that you stream your podcasts.
And you can find us on Instagram at Toilet Times Podcast.
We upload every Sunday, and if we don't upload,
we're dead.
Okay, so who's the greatest baseball player of all time? If you ask 1995 Jason Bear, it's Bo Jackson, right?
But yeah, but baseball is so whether hitting, fielding doesn't really mean anything. But it's
is
like
it Cal Ripken Jr. as a shortstop? And like infielders have the advantage there because who do we talk about in that conversation? Ripken.
Cal
Jeter,
Ripken is the most overrated athlete of all time.
Mark McGwire,
Ripken, Jeter, and McGwire may be the greatest hitter of his generation.
We do Mickey Mantle,
Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra. As a catcher,
but that's why the criteria is so interesting, right? Nolan Ryan,
no, as a pitcher,
yeah. Is it Cy Young?
I think Nolan Ryan gets and Cy Young even they get supplanted by a Randy Johnson, doing what they do.
I don't know. Cy Young played a lot of games and had a lot of wins, and especially back in the day, you used to play so often. Like you'd play like 1 or 2 days
like
rest.
Clemens and Maris, Roger Clemens and Greg Maddux.
So do we? We'll bring it back.
Griffey,
so,
but it's Griffey, isn't it? Griffey, isn't it? Isn't it the kid? Isn't that where it comes down to? Griffey's the best. I don't know how you categorize a point for point, pound for pound, run for run baseball player of all time. Is it Ken Griffey Jr.? No, it's Bo Jackson. Let's be honest. So this is what I was saying. It's not just enough to be the best athlete athletically. It's not just enough to be the best by the stats, because then the conversation can shift to LeBron if we're talking LeBron versus Jordan, right? But it's also what your peers and what the industry thinks of you as the best, right? Jordan is the best because we say so. And no matter how many points LeBron's, I'm not taking anything away from how good Jordan is. Six finals appearances, 6 finals victories. That's great. In his prime, the best but we don't say he's the best in his prime. We ignore that first 45 season. We ignore those 2 seasons with the Wizards, right?
No, I wouldn't say we ignore. I get where you're going to. I wouldn't say we ignore that 45 season. He came off the bench, or he came off of a layoff of playing a completely different sport and almost won the finals that year, right?
Yeah.
They lost to the greatest Magic team of all time, and right?
Yeah.
And so I think that adds to the legacy where he was, and even that stuff. I know you're like, if you want to talk about the 45 season, there are so many urban myths and stories about him just kicking the crap out of people while he's getting ready for Space Jam and just everything. And that's part of it. The legend is part of it, whether we want it to or not. Like that's the legend of Gordie Howe helps, and the legend of Jack Dempsey pushes him above Mayweather. Like you can talk about this stuff, but that has something to do with it.
That's what I meant by saying Jordan's the best because we say he is. Not to say that it's just because we say he is, but because there's a collective kind of agreement that it is what it is. And the younger guys that come after, Kobe, LeBron,
you're on their shoulders.
Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, these guys will never measure up because they have 6'6" of Michael Jordan standing, in
you're an emulation.
But that brings us to basketball. We're not going to get into this with basketball, right? We're not going to piss a bunch of people off by hashing this out any further. This is not about whose stats are stats up. It's about who is considered invariably to be the greatest one. And the only other sport where that contention, in my opinion, is as dynamic as soccer right now. Messi or Ronaldo, right?
Oh, no. The greatest soccer player of all time is Franz Beckenbauer.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that goes into your statement. So, Lionel Messi, one of the greatest goal scorers. I think Pele's a better goal scorer, and moreover, I think Diego Maradona is the greatest goal scorer of all time. But if you want to talk about complete soccer player that has a flawless game on the defensive side, scored goals, innovated his sport, and brought championships to Germany, it's Franz Beckenbauer. He was a defensive man that essentially created the sweeper position. And as I like German soccer and I enjoy, and I was a sweeper, and he changed the sport. And yeah, like I said, he put balls in the back of the net and was also a defensive man. And so I think when you talk about complete player, it's Franz Beckenbauer.
Yeah, I mean, Franz Beckenbauer, soccer was a different sport in 1974 when he won that World Cup.
Yeah.
We
Not a vastly different sport, though.
No, not vastly different. Not like how basketball is different for like
Or
Dr.
football,
J
for
or
that
whatever.
matter.
But the caliber of, or the kind of athletes that were playing soccer then are different than the kind of athletes that are playing soccer now, right? The innovation, Beckenbauer has that, and yeah, it's just like Michael Jordan. Like all of these guys are who they are because of Franz Beckenbauer's, legacy captaining that West Germany team. But I mean, it's hard to say soccer one-on-one, right? Well, this is, I guess we get into recency bias versus legacy bias, right?
Well, yeah, but but all of these guys are legacy players. I think Lionel Messi is in an argument with it, but I don't think he can be argued as the greatest of all time. I mean, maybe if he had won.
But Barcelona's majesty over the last 20 years says something differently.
I think if you have, but Barcelona was a stacked team. They had everybody around him. Like he was, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
he
so
was
did the Bulls in the 90s.
maybe the greatest ball handler of all time. I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo or Ronaldinho might have an argument against that. But when you look at what he did on the national level, I think is ultimately, we're comparing greatest of all time, right? Not one of the greats. You have to do it on the national level. And just as Pele, just as Diego Maradona, and just as Franz Beckenbauer, these guys had a bunch of people around them. Lionel Messi didn't have all those guys. Again, I don't think that's the only mark against him, but I think it's a big mark. You're
talking about competition-wise?
When you're talking about the greatest of all time, you have to, the way we look at soccer, you have to do it on the national level.
Yeah, okay, well, okay. I don't disagree. But you're saying he didn't have like a lot of guys around him, meaning in the sphere of competition?
No. On his team, when while playing for Argentina, that team was not. He was by far and away the best player in that team.
Oh yeah.
Where Franz Beckenbauer had a phenomenal West German team.
Right.
Maradona had a very, very good Argentina team. Yes, Pele had a phenomenal Brazil team. But again, we're right there, kind of splitting hairs. And then again, what's his name? From Russia, the goalie. Is he in the conversation? The like Black Widow or Black Spider, something like
Askarov?
that. No, it's he's older. He's widely known as the greatest goalie of all time. Lev Yashin. Yes.
Yeah, Lev Yashin.
Is he in it as great? Again, vastly different positions, right? But
goalies like centers are kind of underrated that way, unless you're Shaq, I guess.
Yeah. Where they're different positions. Like you can't compare Shaq to Lou Alcindor or any of those guys, or Jordan to Shaq and Lou Alcindor.
Yeah.
Just as you can't compare goalies, but that's why it's fun to have these conversations.
Yeah. Okay.
So Zidane.
No, not Zidane.
I put him in the top 10, but as far as if France wins that,
his
or
status,
not France, France. If they win that,
if they win the World Cup, his status climbs higher.
Maybe, but he's up there. Zizou.
Yeah. What else? Football. Is it Tom Brady? Is it?
Football's another interesting one.
It's hard.
Quarterback gets the quarterback gets the ball more than anybody, so it's hard to go against the quarterback. You literally get the ball every offensive play, but Reggie White is arguably better in the defense than he was. It's a different position. As far as positions go, who would be, you look at Madden, who would be a 100 in their position? Jerry Rice is better at wide receiver than Tom Brady is at quarterback. I mean, I think Peyton Manning is a better quarterback as far as skills go.
But not a better champion.
But not a better winner. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'd just like to point out that Neon Deion Sanders is the only athlete to win a World Series and a Super Bowl.
Yeah. So greatest athlete of all time? Do we go Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders?
I think part of being a good athlete is not getting hurt. So as much as I love Bo Jackson, and in my 90s self, he's the greatest baseball player of all time, being injury prone counts against you.
Yeah.
In those instances, which is why Derrick Rose is not in the conversation of greatest point guards of all time because he's injury prone. At least not in the top 3 or top 4, because being injury prone matters.
No, I agree. And showing up, right? Yeah.
Showing up, yeah.
You have to be there.
Showing up too much, right? Is that Russell Westbrook's problem?
Yeah.
He's too much there. So yeah, this was fun. What did we miss? Did we miss anything? We got baseball, football, basketball. Oh, well, I guess we didn't deep dive into football, but it's almost impossible, right? Like, football's a harder one. Like baseball. Is it Tom Brady? Is it Peyton Manning? John Elway? Joe Montana? It's not Dan. John Marino was the best to never win.
You also have, in football, you have 24 other guys. Like, you've got 11, and then a punter and a kicker as well. Like, and all of that goes in championships too. And then not including, football is by far the biggest coaching staffs too, right?
Yeah. And
like
for the
Tom
record,
Brady,
the snapper in the center. Well, the snapper has his hands on the ball even more.
Long snapper's lost a couple of games in there, but Tom Brady has had the best. He has the best owner and one of the greatest coaches of all time. And also the way they manage salary cap and everything, and putting the correct people around Tom Brady speaks volumes for his success, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And he also has taken pay cuts, right? So he valued championships over monetary gain, especially because of the fact that his wife brings in more money than he does.
Oh, well, that's what it means to be a proper football player, right? Like, not just the best athlete on the field. But
but that's, I don't think that's fair to just, because some people you have to make, like some people, money is the most important, right? Like, it's important to get paid. Jim Brown might be the greatest football player of all time. If he was getting paid, he made more money as a public speaker, and he had, it's MLK Day, promoting African Americans and doing all that stuff was much more important to him, and had much more monetary gain than he did getting his butt kicked when he was playing for the Browns. So I think if Jim Brown plays 4 more seasons in the NFL, which he would if you had been a modern day player, I mean, a lot of people think he's the greatest of all time, but it's interesting to have those conversations.
Yeah. All right, cool. I got nothing else on this topic. You guys got anything to any parting shots?
Plenty, but not enough to
not enough to fill a bucket. What do you guys think? I know you guys probably don't agree with all of our lists. That's the point. Talk about it. Email us. Comment on the whatever platform you're watching this on. Upvote us on Reddit. I guess don't downvote us on Reddit. Oh, thank you.
Shameless plug.
But yeah, what do you guys think? This is not a who's the best list. It's not a list of who's the best. It's who's the air quotes is not the right gesture to do here because
parentheses.
They are the best. No asterisks needed. What do you guys think? Let us know. Comment, subscribe, like, all those fun things. We're on Instagram now at the Digital TP Podcast. So check us out on Instagram. Check us out on Twitter. Check us out on Facebook. If we ignore you, it's just because we're lazy, not because we don't like you. For the Digital Toilet Paper Podcast, my name's Jason Bear.
I'm Rex Rebo.
At Armed and Hilarious.
And we really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Till next time.
Love you guys.
Adios.